Lululemon is a luxury brand of athletic wear that we have all probably heard about, may have even indulged in. They're known to be fancy, they're comfy, and they have just a fun vibe in the store. But a store in Bethesda, Maryland had anything but a fun vibe on March 12, 2011, when the store manager unlocked the front door and found the store to be just a complete chaotic wreck. Everything was strewn around, and obviously there had been something go on out of the ordinary the night before. But nothing was going to prepare people for what they found inside, which were two women, one barely conscious and the other already deceased. Who would do something like this to these two women inside a store known just for sought-after yoga pants? Well, the answer was going to leave everyone shocked. My name is Misty Sims, and this is Beyond Reasonable Doubt. Let's dive right in. Before I get going here, I do want to stop and say sorry for the long hiatus. It's been a few weeks, opened a new restaurant, and then I got sick for what felt like a month, and my kids were sick, and I just left you guys hanging, and I'm so sorry. But I'm back, and I'm on the mend, and we have a whole lot of true crime to cover, and you will still be getting Darlie Routier Part 2, but I want to refilm that one after trying to film while I was sick, so I bring you a much better product. So that's coming up soon, and thank you guys for bearing with me while I had to take a little bit of time off, but I'm back, baby, and today we're going to talk the tragedy of this Lululemon store. So on Saturday, March 12, 2011, a manager who went by the name of Rachel went to open up the Lululemon store around about 8 a.m. Now, she found it odd when she got there because the door was already unlocked, and that's out of the ordinary, right? It should have been closed and locked up from the night before. So she's already nervous about the door, but when she went inside, the scene inside made her even more uneasy. Clothes were thrown around everywhere. Mannequins, they were just like slung on the floor. And there was a TV that I believe had been mounted to the wall, and it had been like ripped off the wall and smashed onto the ground. So this was just all like a clear sign that this was not the state the store was supposed to be in, and something bad had gone down inside. So Rachel, of course, she assumes a break-in until she takes a few steps farther inside and sees blood. Now that, of course, made her panic, and she took off out of the store, and a man named Ryan sees her rushing out the front door because he's waiting next door at the Apple store outside in line, queued up to get a new iPad. And so he goes over to her, and he's, asking her, can he help? And she tells him, kind of what she found, and he offers to go in and look around for her. So he goes in, Ryan sees all this chaos, and he keeps moving towards the back of the store, and he just keeps seeing more and more blood and more things wrecked. Well, he sees a door towards the back of the store that's kind of open, and he goes back to see what's on the other side, and he gives it a big push, and it's difficult to get open, and he finds out why when on the other side of the door, he finds a body. Now, there is blood just absolutely everywhere. It's splattered up the walls. It's pooled around the body. It's bad. And the body was in such a bad state, poor Ryan couldn't even tell if this was a man or a woman. The body was just so badly injured and beaten up. And I mean, kudos to Ryan for being brave enough to even go that far. But by this point, he's seen what he's seen, and I'm sure he knows, he needs to get out of there and call the authorities. So as he's starting to make his way, like kind of turn around, go back out, he hears a muffled groan coming from the employee's bathroom. Well, he goes in, and he finds a woman who's also bloody, and she's bound with zip ties, and her leggings have been cut at the crotch. Now, she's in bad shape, but she's breathing. So when the authorities are called and they get on scene, they're trying to help her. They are able to make an identification on the deceased body as 30-year-old female employee of the Lululemon store, Jayna Murray. Now, Jayna was described as somebody who just everybody loved. She's an adrenaline junkie who loved things like skydiving. She was a student at Johns Hopkins studying to get her master's degree in business and communications, and she had actually done a case study on Lululemon as part of her classwork, and one of her professors had encouraged her to go get a job at the store because of her love for their business model and philosophy. So that was how she ended up at the store. She was in a relationship with her longtime boyfriend who she'd known since 7th grade, and he was actually getting ready to propose to Jayna. So, yeah, I mean, just Very sad, and such a beautiful life lost. Well, the other woman who was found conscious in that bathroom was also a store employee. She was 28-year-old Britney Norwood. Now, she was taken on to the hospital, and while most of her injuries were superficial, she did have a pretty rough head injury, but it wasn't bad enough that she wasn't able to talk to the police. So she was able to give them an account of that evening, and she told them that she and Jayna had both worked the closing shift on March 11th. They closed the store around 10. Jayna went and got in her car and headed off home, and Britney headed towards the train station. But she realized that she couldn't find her Metro card or her wallet, so she assumed that she left her wallet at the Lululemon store. She calls Jayna to come unlock the store because Jayna is another one of the managers there and had keys. She told Jayna she needed to get home. She assumed, she left her wallet inside. So Jayna's like, sure. She turns around, she comes back, leaves her car outside the store, runs in, unlocks the door, and goes in with Britney to help her look around. Now, they left the door unlocked while they were looking, and they had searched for about 10 minutes, and they can't find anything, no sign of the wallet or the card. So Jayna told Britney, hey, use my card. Let's just get on home for tonight. We can try this again tomorrow. Well, Britney said, yay, great, I get to go home. They're trying to leave the store. And about this time, 2 men came into the store dressed head to toe in black and ski masks. Well, they struck the girls, one striking Jayna, knocking her out, the other striking Britney, and dragging her to the back of the store. And she said he was very aggressive. He was using a lot of rough, violent language, racial slur type things. And she said that he started just cutting her all over. And then he cut her leggings and assaulted him, both with himself and a wooden coat hanger. Now, Britney said she could hear Jayna kind of crying and thudding around and screaming, but that slowly quieted down. Britney was able to get away from her attacker and try to get to Jayna. And she said she just kept telling the police over and over that there's just blood everywhere, just so much blood everywhere. And she said because, all this is going on, the chaos, she didn't quite make it all the way to Jayna before her attacker got back to her, knocked her down, and dragged her back to the bathroom. And that was when he bound her at the wrists and the ankles with those zip ties. Now, Britney was exhibiting signs of severe, survivor's guilt because she just kept saying over and over and over this wouldn't have happened if she hadn't lost her card for the train and her wallet. And then she asked the police, how's Jayna doing? And at that point, that was when they had to break the news to her that Jayna didn't make it. She had passed away at the store. Now, an autopsy was performed on Jayna's body, and it's awful, y'all. It's awful. She had 331 injuries to her body, or at least that's what they could identify. Now, they believe that there were 7 different weapons based on what they found at the scene that did these injuries. Those were a hammer, a wrench, 2 box cutters, a rope, a metal peg from a mannequin, and a knife. And they could tell Jayna was alive during the attack and fighting for her life because the wounds had bruising and bleeding around them. And that happens when your heart is still bleeding. Now, the last blow was a stab wound to her back, and that severed her spinal cord. And that's actually what ended her life. So, horrible. So the police are going to try to get a description of these attackers from Britney because, we want to catch these guys, right? But Britney said, they had their masks on, and about all she could tell them was that one was shorter than the other one. So not much to go on there. And there was a clue in the store. The police were able to see a bloody footprint from where someone had walked through all that chaos and throughout the store. And the size of the shoe was rather large. It was a size 14. Now, the store, they didn't have any type of recordings, cameras, CCTV footage, nothing like that. But the Apple store next door did. And it captured 2 men walking past the store right close to the time of the attack. Now, they couldn't make out their faces on the camera, but the police decided, okay, well, maybe they'll come back. And so we're going to just do an old-fashioned stakeout, and we'll wait and see if these 2 men come back to the scene, because all too often, we hear criminals, they do that, right? Well, and why they do that, I don't, know why. Why would you do that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. But luckily, that's exactly what happened. These 2 men, they pop up walking right past the store, dressed head to toe in black, right at the time they were hoping they would be there. So police officers, they pop up, they question them. But it turns out to be a bust because these fellows were waiters at a nearby restaurant, and they're dressed head to toe in black because that was the required uniform of that establishment. And they walk that way home every day because that's where they live. That was the direction to get them home. So not much came, out of that, but, They tried. So the police decided they were going to go into that Apple store because, yeah, as we all know, Apple stores have cameras, CCTV footage, they got it all, right? So they start talking to the employees, and the employees said, that, yeah, they heard commotion coming from that store the night before. They heard a lot of yelling from female voices. They heard thuds. They heard one angrily shouting, like, talk to me, tell me what's going on, why won't you tell me? And then one getting very hysterical and screaming things like, please help me, God help me. And they said there was no male voices, just the females. Now, why the Apple employees didn't call security or police or tell anybody, I guess, we'll never know. But they did tell the police that they thought it was just a little drama, going on. So no need to call anybody, I guess. But it was a little more than a little bit, y'all. A little more than a little bit. Well, the police, they go back to the store and they look around the scene again, including at the footprints. And this is when they figure out that there's two sets of footprints. A smaller one and then that original size 14. But the size 14 footprint is always on top of the smaller one. They're not overlapping, nothing. Then they see a size 14 pair of shoes in the store, and the print is identical to the prints on the floor. So they call Britney back, and they ask her about these shoes. Like, what are these size 14 shoes doing in the store? And she said that they actually belong to the store, and customers could try them on, like when they're wanting to try on their clothes, if they didn't bring their own sneakers. Well, police, they weren't really buying that, especially because they figured out the weapons and the zip ties all belong to a toolbox that also belonged to the Lululemon store. So these attackers would have had to show up. They didn't bring anything with them. They were just hoping for this toolbox of opportunity. Make that make sense, right? And then they also noticed that those shoes, the footprints never left the store. So either the attacker came in, changed the shoes, stomped all over the other footprints, and then took off the shoes and left, or there's something a little rotten here. Now, the police also noticed the distinct difference in the injuries between Britney and Jayna. Jayna had been brutalized, and Britney kind of seemed light in comparison to those 331 injuries, so that was a little sus as well. Well, the police officer made the statement that he didn't really believe Britney, and then he questioned, well, wait, y'all said Jayna pulled up in her car and left it outside. Where's the car? Well, police started searching, and they found it 3 blocks away, and there was both Britney and Jayna's blood inside, and forensics showed only one person was in that car at the time. Well, Britney denied ever being in the car, and they couldn't hold her, and they couldn't arrest her because they didn't really have, concrete evidence that she'd done something fishy, or that she'd been the one that attacked Jayna. But in a move that no one expected, Britney shows back up at the police station and says, I've got a little bit more information for you. And that was when she dropped the mic and said that she was in the car on the night of the attack. She's actually who drove it and parked it 3 blocks away. The attackers, they had forced her to move the car for them and then threatened to kill her if she didn't return to the store. So she walked back to the store after she had driven that car and moved it. Now, she didn't alert anybody. She didn't keep driving. She didn't call for help. Yeah. Well, the police didn't really buy that, probably like you and I are, right? They told her, hey, we think that you are the one that did this to Jayna. And she clammed up, except for saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home, on repeat. Now, the police hope that maybe someone else could get her talking. So her brother is there, and they tell him kind of everything that they're thinking, and then they leave the room, leave the brother in there with her, hoping she'll come clean to her brother, right? Because they're watching, even though they said they aren't. Now, Britney asks her brother if there are cameras in the room, and he tells her no, he checked, and then just flat out asks her, hey, Britt, did you do this? And she just said she didn't want to talk about it there. No red flags there, right? Like a normal person who didn't do this would have probably yelled no or been crying, screaming, or whatever. But anyway, her brother says, I think you need to get a lawyer. I think we need a lawyer. Well, she never admitted it verbatim. She did give some alluding statements that gave police, what they needed to arrest her. And Jayna's poor family actually found out about that arrest on the way to Jayna's funeral. And they were in shock. I mean, they thought Britney was attacked too, and she was, thank God, a survivor of this horrible attack. Now, the family was offered the opportunity to weigh in on a plea deal for Britney versus going to trial and pursuing life in prison, but they were presented with some facts about the attack. And those facts were that most violent attacks have on average 50-ish wounds, and of course Jayna had well over 300. And this attack was pretty long in the sense of violent attacks. It lasted at least 15 minutes, which rules out a crime of passion type scenario. So based on this and the thought of a violent person like this walking the streets again, Jayna's family made the decision to take this to trial, which of course is going to be awful because they've got to relive the whole thing. The whole thing. Well, at trial, it came out that Britney had a long history of stealing, including from her family, and another Lululemon store, which she was subsequently let go from before she was hired onto this one. And she also had a history of violence. I mean, she had a restraining order against her from an ex-boyfriend based on stalking him and his new girlfriend and actually breaking into their apartment. So this painted the background and motive of Britney attacking Jayna a little bit. Since she had come on board to the Lululemon store, employees said that they had been noticing things going missing, and it had only been happening since she got there. Now, they didn't have evidence that it was her, but of course, they kind of kept their eyes on her. And the company, Lululemon, had a policy that every employee's bag had to be checked at the end of their shift. Well, on Friday, March 11th, Jayna checked Britney's bag and found a pair of leggings in there that weren't paid for, even though Britney claims she did pay for them. Jayna, she didn't really have a whole lot of trust in Britney, so she's like, you know what? Hey, I just need to talk to our main manager, Rachel, the next morning. Well, at this point, Britney, she starts to panic over losing her job again, and then the stealing and all this. So she then launched into her plan to lure Jayna back to that store where she confronted her. If you remember that conversation the Apple store employees heard, that was the confrontation, and of course ended in a brutal attack. Britney moved the car because Rachel, the manager, actually lived across the street from the store, and she didn't want her to see Jayna's car just sitting there all night. And then they believe that she ransacked the store and walked all over the store in those size 14 shoes to cover up her prints. And then she has to make it look like she was attacked herself, right? So she cuts herself in those little superficial cuts. She cut her leggings, and there was no assault. She soaks up Jayna's blood with paper towels, puts it on herself and all over the bathroom floor. And then she zip tied her ankles and then used her teeth to zip tie her hands, put them over her head, and laid there the next morning until Ryan found her. Now, you're probably wondering then, I didn't say anything about the head injury. Where'd that come from? Because as we talked about, that one was pretty rough. Well, it's pretty rough how she got it too. She got it during the attack on Jayna from the momentum of swinging and hitting her, and she hit herself on the pullback. Well, as you can imagine, it didn't really take the jury a long time to come back on this one. They came back with a guilty verdict on the count of premeditated first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So, I mean, if that wasn't a wild one all over some dang leggings, y'all. I mean, expensive leggings, but still. Just because you didn't want to get caught stealing, this is where you land. I will never understand people who don't want to get caught doing something bad and then they covered up with something like the absolute worst thing possible. I mean, they probably would have fired her. They probably wouldn't even called the cops if she had paid for them after the fact or returned them. I mean, I don't know, but still, who resorts to this? And I am absolutely blown away at the strength of Jayna's family to pursue justice to protect others, even though it meant that they had to sit there and they had to listen to what their daughter went through. You guys are stronger than I probably will ever be. Whew. All right, well, as always, guys, thank you for being here. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe button and notification bell so you will know when I post new content. And as always, stay safe out there and stay sweet, my cupcakes. I love you, and I will see you a lot sooner next time. Bye!